Good evening and good to have you watching the Roundtable on Prime TV on Monday, the 11th January. Well, as you know, Roundtable is the forum where I pursue a discussion with a person who has an impressive track record, whose character, whose disposition can be taken as an example, especially to the youth, the next generation of Sri Lanka. This evening, we invited another figure in the corporate world who was a sportsman turned businessman and who has left a very impressive track record both in sports and businessman, and turns out to be and called upon as a very straightforward person and a person of deliverance. When I say deliverance, he is a man who has delivered what he has promised. Known to be a person who says what he does and does what he says. He is Mr. Asanga Senivaratne, the Director CEO of Asia Capital. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Mike.
We welcome you as you start off the program at the very outset to the Roundtable program.
Thanks.
We are going to be inquisitorial about your success story and also some of your thoughts in the industry in which that you operate, and also some of your perception with regard to the national initiative that are taking place. And Mr. Senivaratne is also currently a member of the interim committee of Sri Lanka Rugby, somewhat controversial topic. I'm sure that I will shoot a couple of questions about that too. And he was formerly the vice president of Sri Lanka Rugby Football. You know, what people say is like on the verge of him being elected as the president of Sri Lanka Rugby Football Union. The SLRF was dissolved and interim committee was appointed. I don't know what extent he would agree, and he's also a rugby coach who has left many impressive track records, especially his tenure as the National Rugby Sevens coach of Sri Lanka since 2000-2003, as well as in his various capacities as a rugby coach, especially for CNFC and of Sri Lanka Army. He was the person who brought Sri Lanka Army rugby to that of a level which could easily compete with the other club outfits. So let me start this discussion with Mr. Senivaratne by taking him to down the memory lane to his good old days at St. Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia, where he pursued more than in education in sports, both in cricket and rugby. Yes, Mr. Senivaratne, about your beginnings.
Well, I studied at St. Thomas's Prep School up to the O-levels, and then I went over to St. Thomas's College and did my A-levels. I represented St. Thomas's, as you correctly said, in cricket and rugby and table tennis and tennis. So that's about what I did at St. Thomas's. And then I joined CCC and CRNFC and pursued my cricket and rugby at club level, and then I played for Sri Lanka in rugby and then in under-23 cricket.
It is for me it's a little bit of a kind of an uncommon type of a story for a young sportsman to pursue both cricket and rugby together at the highest level. How did you manage to do these two things at once?
Well, I think in days gone by, sportsmen did tend to play rugby and cricket. A lot of sportsmen that I know of, Jagat Fernando, Mahesh Rodrigo, Owen Matau, to name a few, and I know there are a lot more, even people like Michael Tissera. So playing cricket and rugby wasn't strange to a sportsman. It came very naturally in school. And
I mean at the club level, Mr.
Yeah, you're right. At the moment, not many, you don't get any boys playing rugby and cricket, and also one of the reasons for that is that the game is very professional now. There are lots of demands on each sport on its own, and I suppose time as well, and also you have to have a career as well. So I think a sportsman today has to decide whether he wants to play cricket or rugby, but I praise and thank God for the fact that I was able to do both equally well.
Well, you went on to represent under-23 cricket and also captain CRNFC from 94 to 90 and played for CCC from 94 to 96 and captain CRNFC in 1987. Now, among these two sports, cricket is obviously the attraction at the international level. Sure. So, how did it come that you happened to untimely withdraw from cricket and concentrate in rugby?
Well, what happened was
a Sri Lanka cricketer.
Well, yeah, I may have, but what happened was I played for CCC when I was 17, and I was very successful. But unfortunately, Sri Lanka only played 6 test matches between 1986 and 1900.
I can remember even the former captain Arjun.
That's right. It was one of the issues that he raised regarding his career, because I mean, if you take the number of test matches and one days he's played, it only started really counting after 92, 93, and by that time, although I was still playing for CCC, I had decided that I would pursue other avenues, in the sense in form of stockbroking, and also I spent 4 years playing professionally in Australia and 1 year playing in the UK. So 5 years of that time was spent overseas, and I just kept coming back during the summer and playing rugby for SIA. So that's how my rugby career grew, for the simple reason that, you know, there was not much cricket to play, and I mean, we were competing with people like Siddharth Vettumuni, Roy Dias, Ranjan Madugal, and you know,
top players.
Yeah, and I guess my claim to fame could be the fact that the World Cup winning side were the guys we played against, and we, you know, regularly beat them, and we scored against them, and we took wickets against them. So that's a great thing to know, at least like the guys who actually played were the best in the world. So I mean, there's no real shame in that, you know, I mean, coming second best to those guys. So but it was great. I mean, it was very, very tough times. The economy was, you know, reeling after the JVP, then also the insurgencies and the Tamil problem. So it was very hard times for young people growing up at that time.
Well, Mr. Nathan, when I look at your profile and the landmarks in your career, sometimes I envy you, because the youth in the late 80s, whatever said and done, have had better opportunities compared to the opportunities the youth have now.
Right.
We are in a cutthroat race. So in that context, as a businessman, as a senior citizen, as a person who is well positioned to make a comment on this, what are the challenges that you all had then, and how did you all achieve those challenges, and what are the challenges ahead of the modern youth?
Well, I think during any period of time there are challenges, and it's tough for youth coming through, and a lot of times you feel that you have been shortchanged. That's natural, but I mean, the whole thing is that in life, you know, you don't give up, you just keep going, you know, and you take the good and the bad, and I mean, that's exactly what I've tried to do. You try and make the best out of what the opportunities you get, and keep going. And I think the youth of today, now for instance, you take a cricketer, I mean, he has so many opportunities, starting from say under 14 World Cup to 18, there are B teams, under 19s, you know, I mean, there is a really good chance of trying to make it into the big league. And I mean, in the past that was not the case, you know, I mean, there would be a team going through Sri Lanka, or, you know, one-off tours or something like that, and I mean, it was very tough. So, you know, I mean, when you take the 2 periods, I guess there is the good and the bad in both times.
A few examples of that?
Well, for instance, I would say that, okay, taking from my experience, I mean, the under-23 tour that came, the Pakistan tour, was a one-off. I mean, you know, and there probably wasn't another tour for 2-3 years. But now if you take cricket, there are 18 tours, there are under-19 tours, there are under-16 tours, and it's yearly. And there are also coaches who are dedicated for each age group, and who are like talent spotters. Now, for instance, Jerome Jayaratne, my teammate at CCC and St. Thomas's and Sri Lanka, he heads the coaching of Sri Lankan cricket. And Ashley De Silva, Roger Rodrigo, and they're all on the lookout, and you can see the talent that is coming through. I mean, these guys haven't just turned up and just scored runs and just got picked. These guys have been identified and, you know, chosen and put in there, you know. I mean, you take Kapugedara and, you know, some of the Velagedara and, you know, Bandara and a few of the other up-and-coming cricketers. They were all identified early, and, you know, they've been nurtured, they've been financed, and they, you know, they are on a good footing. That never happened in the past. I mean, we had to just come from home, whether you played for Sri Lanka or you know, for whoever, and especially club cricketers were very it was very, very tough for club cricketers, because, you know, they had to work, and then we had to play 3 days, of cricket, first class cricket, and then they made it 4 days, you know. So it was very difficult to balance the job and, you know, cricket.
Do you agree, Mr. Sundaram, that during those days, in your days of time, when you all were young, there were, like, you know, always a criticism that there were a lot of favorations, especially from the boys who come from big schools, for instance from your school. In comparison to what was there, you know, in terms of favorations, today it has turned out to be somewhat transparent, especially with the involvement of media. I mean, you can't just pick a player and play in rugby or football or cricket team, because the journalists will do their honors, you know, will take the pen and, you know, point out these wrong decision making. So in that context, do you agree there was a certain element of favorations involved in your time involved in sports?
I think at any stage, Mahesh, people feel that there are favoritism.